Guys, welcome back to the channel, and of course today we are here to review round 16. Big round, finally all the buys are over, so we're getting into the final part of the AFL season. Some big games throughout the round. We started with Brisbane versus Melbourne and we ended with the West Coast Eagles up against Hawthorn. We will of course start with the first game of round 16, which was Brisbane and Melbourne. And despite Melbourne leading for a lot of this game, it was the Brisbane Lions who ran over the top of them in the end. 86-81, so a 5-point win for the Lions. So, getting into the game itself, the Lions took the early advantage with the first two goals of the game, but both teams did waste some early chances in the first quarter. In the first quarter alone, teams combined for 4 goals, 12, but it was the Lions who led by 14 points at quarter time. Both teams kicked some early goals in the second term, but then the Demons got on a massive run. Melbourne kicked 6 goals in a row and 7 out of the last 8 to take a 17-point lead into the major break. So a 31-point turnaround there from the Demons, which was quite surprising. And one of the big catalyst players for the Demons in the first half was Kozzy Pickett. He kicked 4 goals, 4 tackles, and was pretty much the most influential player in the first half on the ground. Now, like the first quarter, we saw a lot of missed opportunities in the third term, with both teams not being able to take full advantage. The Demons had some chances to take the game away from the Lions, but unfortunately they only kicked 2 goals for, and it really kept Brisbane in the game. However, the Lions didn't take a lot of their chances either. They kicked 3 goals, 6, and were still down by 15 points at three-quarter time. Now, the Lions had all the momentum in the last quarter, but didn't kick their first goal until about halfway through the final term after kicking 4 behinds in a row. The Demons had some chances to keep the Lions at bay, but failed to kick a goal in the last quarter, and the Lions ran over the top of the Demons in the end after Hugh McCluggage gave them the lead late, and the Lions were able to hold on to a 5-point win. So this is a great win from the Lions. They weren't exactly at their best, but that's what you have to do sometimes. It's what the great teams do, and they did really well in the end to claw out a victory here. Melbourne, they really should have won this game. They had the momentum in the second and third terms, and they even had chances in the last quarter to put this game to bed, but just couldn't take their chances. And without Christian Petrarca, it's going to be really hard to see the Melbourne fighting their way back into the finals this year. But let's get to the statistics in this game. Top scorer, massive game in the end from Josh Dunkley, 158. Dane Zorko with the 118. Clayton Oliver, great game from him with the 109. Kozzy Pickett with the 104. Jack Viney, great game from him as well with the 104. And then Lachie Neale with the even 100. Now, of course, we get to the votes in this game, and as we're doing every single game in the AFL season, we're giving a 3-2-1 voting system. And within the finals bye, I think it'll be a Saturday, maybe a Friday night, we'll be doing a live countdown of the Boundary Riders votes and find out who our second ever Boundary Riders medalist will be. Last year it was Zach Butters, but to the Brisbane v Melbourne game, the votes, of course, 3 votes went to Jack Viney, 2 votes went to Josh Dunkley, and the 1 vote went to Kozzy Pickett. After that, we get to Saturday afternoon. First game was North Melbourne up against the Bulldogs. And despite North Melbourne being able to hold pretty close to the Bulldogs throughout the whole afternoon, the Western Bulldogs in the end ran out pretty comfortable winners in the end by 17 points. 77 to the Bulldogs, 60 to North Melbourne. Was a couple of injury concerns from the Bulldogs front, of course. Taylor Duray was subbed out in the third quarter with a foot injury, so that's a bit of a concern. And also Lathan Vandermeer. There was reports as well that he had an ankle concern in the last quarter. So hopefully for the Bulldogs, they are both okay. Both pretty important to their side. But let's get to the game itself. The Dogs kicked the first 2 goals of this game to take the early advantage, but the Kangas almost draw back level with 2 of their own midway through the quarter. But after teams both traded some late goals, it was the Dogs who led by 9 points at quarter time. It was a pretty dour second term with both teams not being able to kick a goal. In fact, we only saw the Bulldogs kick the only goal of the second term. And they also get North Melbourne goalless throughout the whole quarter. And at halftime, the Dogs led by 19 points. Now, the game opened up a lot more in the third quarter. And midway through the term, the Dogs kicked 3 goals in a row to take a 6+ goal margin. And at three-quarter time, the Dogs had a pretty comfortable 31-point lead. Now, to the credit of North Melbourne, they didn't just die wondering. And in the final term, after the Dogs kicked the early goal of it, North Melbourne were able to kick the final 3 goals of the game and finish off pretty strong and only went down by 17 points. So a really good performance from the Bulldogs in the end. It was not exactly their best day, but they did enough to win this contest. Interesting play, they put Rory Lobb back, and he played pretty well. Interesting if they keep him down there for the rest of the year, but great job from Rory Lobb. And North Melbourne, look, they're not winning games. That's something they need to start doing, just finding a win out of something. But they've been well to be very competitive and keeping the games quite close over the last month or so. So good job from North Melbourne, especially after the bye. Now let's get to the statistics in this game. Tristan Cherry top scored with the 129, Marcus Bontempelli with the 122, Tucker with the 114, Liberatore with the 99, English with the 96, and then Harry Sheasel with the 94. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Marcus Bontempelli, 2 votes went to Liam Jones, and the 1 vote went to Liberatore. Now, the reason why Liam Jones got the 1 vote here is because he matched up unlucky all day and kept him goalless across the whole afternoon. And he was also damaging on the other side of things. He had 17 touches, 10 marks, 9 intercept possessions, and was just really influential throughout the whole afternoon, Liam Jones. I mean, you could almost mark down Nick Larkey to get a couple of goals a game. So who knows what would have happened if Nick Larkey got off the chain. So great game from Liam Jones, and that's why he's got the 2 votes. After that, we get to the Swans versus Fremantle, the other Saturday afternoon game. And the Swans lost in a heartbreaker. They finally dropped the game. Fremantle were brilliant, and in the end, they held on by 1 point. 99 Fremantle, 98 the Swans. There was one injury concern from this game, which is Harry Cunningham. At halftime, he was ruled out with hamstring tightness. That's really unfortunate. He's been really good for the Swans this year as that small defender. But let's get to the game itself. Fremantle started brilliantly with the first 3 goals of this game, and the Swans were incredibly sluggish out of the blocks. Sydney would be able to steady there with 2 goals of their own, but then that was pretty short-lived as the Dockers would pile on 4 goals straight late in the first quarter and took a 27-point lead into quarter time. The Dockers pushed the lead past 5 goals early in the second term, but the Swans wrestled back a little bit of momentum with 2 goals in a row, and it really felt like then the Swans were going to start wrestling back that sort of momentum they've been able to do a lot in the second terms this year. But again, the credit of Fremantle, they were able to hold on when the Swans had the momentum and at halftime still held a 27-point lead. Now, for all of the third term, the game was goal for goal. The Swans were not be able to break under a 20-point barrier until late in the quarter when the Swans finally broke within 2 goals and set this game up for a thrilling finish, being down by 12 points at 3-quarter time. Now, Fremantle did kick the first goal of the last quarter to take the lead up to 19 points, but then the Swans really started to claw their way back. The Swans kicked the next 3 goals of this game to draw a level late in the final term, but Fremantle did kick 2 behind to give themselves a slight advantage, but then the Swans had 2 chances to steal this game. Florent missed an opportunity with 40 seconds to play, and then of course McDonald's shank from outside 50 meant the Dockers were able to hold on for a historic 1-point victory. So it was a great win from Fremantle in the end. There was no way that City deserved to win this game. They got very close, but they never led throughout the whole afternoon. So it was a very good win from Fremantle. It's one of their best wins I've ever seen them have. I mean, I expected the Swans were going to drop a game. I didn't think it was going to be this one, but the Swans were pretty sluggish throughout the whole afternoon. Their pressure wasn't there for a lot of it, and Fremantle took full advantage. And even with players like Hayden Young not having their best game when he's been one of their better players this year, they found other avenues to goal. Nathan Fyfe was brilliant on Isaac Heaney, and they played really well through the midfield. So great job from Fremantle. They deserve that win. And they're currently in the top 3 as of the start of recording this on Sunday. So let's get to the statistics of this game. Nick Blakey, top scorer with the 121. Only 100 fantasy point scorer in this game. Jeremy Sharp with the 98. Luke Ryan with the 97. Corey Wagner with the 94. Sarong with the 92. And then Hayden McLean with the 91. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Luke Ryan. 2 votes went to Nick Blakey. And the 1 vote went to Caleb Sarong. Now Caleb Sarong did have the 3 votes all but locked up at halftime. But then he got the tag from James Jordan, who did a really good job on him. So Sarong in the end dropped down to 1 vote. After that, we get to the Gold Coast versus Collingwood. And in the end, despite Collingwood claw their way back from 30 points down twice in this game, they just weren't able to come back and win this one in the end. They did take the lead late in the last quarter, but the Gold Coast fought their way back, won this one by 11 points in the end. The 101 to the Gold Coast, 90 to Collingwood. There was one injury concern from this game, which was Bo McQuarrie. He came off in the third term with a calf strain and was subbed out soon after. So he brings a lot of speed to their game, and Bo McQuarrie has been one of their more important players this year with a lot of injuries. So a little bit of a concern there for the Pies. But let's get to the game itself. The Suns led the territory battle early in this game, but the pressure from Collingwood was at its best as well. Despite the Suns leading for the majority of the first quarter, it was Collingwood who took the lead by 1 point into quarter time. Moving into the second term, the Suns took control, just missed so many chances and didn't take full control on the scoreboard with 4 goals for the term. But the Suns kept Collingwood to only a goal and led by 20 points at half time. Now, despite the Pies kicking the first goal of the second half, the Suns would take the lead past 30 points twice in the third term, but at 3-quarter time, the Suns held a pretty comfortable 26-point lead. But as Collingwood have done over the past few years, they weren't going to die wondering. Collingwood kicked 5 goals in a row in the final term to take the lead for the first time since early in the second term, and it felt like the Pies have just done it again, fighting their way back and stealing the win. But the Suns showed some real maturity late in this game. Pretty much as soon as the Pies took the lead, the Suns would quickly kick a goal and take back the lead, and a late goal in the end from Ben Ainsworth sealed the deal for the Suns as they held on for an 11-point win. So it's a real mature win from the Gold Coast. Again, it's at home. They haven't lost there this season, which is great to see. If they can just claw maybe 1 or 2 wins away from home this year, they'll make finals. But great win from the Gold Coast. Really good performance from them. So moving to the statistics now of this game. Noah Anderson top score with the 140. Nick Dacos with the 115. Ben Ainsworth with the 113. Darcy Cameron with the 108. Sam Flanders with the 104. And then Took Miller with the 100. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Noah Anderson, 2 votes went to Sam Flanders, and the 1 vote went to Nick Dacos. So Sam Flanders for a lot of this year has been playing off half-back, but Damien Hardwick's chucked him in the middle the last couple of weeks, and he's performed really well for the Suns. So I think it's a really good move going forward. Sam Flanders brings something a little bit different to the likes of Noah Anderson and Matt Rao, and even Took Miller. So I think that's something they can definitely look at as an avenue in their midfield going through for the rest of the year. But after that, we get to the Crows versus the GWS Giants, and the Crows led throughout the most of the night, and in the end, held on for a pretty comfortable 16-point win in the end. Adelaide 94, GWS 78. So to the game itself, the Crows took an early control of this game with the first 2 goals, but they misfired in front of goal for a lot of the first quarter, and the Giants took their chances in the opening term. They kicked 4 straight goals to the Crows, who kicked 2 goals 6, and at quarter time, the Giants led by a goal. And despite the Giants kicking the first goal of the second term, it was the Crows who finally took their chances in front of goal. Adelaide kicked 7 unanswered goals to take a comfortable 33-point lead into the main break. And the Giants did kind of hold their own, but they were very lucky that the Crows didn't put this game to bed as they kicked 1 goal 5 in the third term. The Giants only kicked 3 goals 3, however, and Adelaide still held a 23-point lead going into the last change. Now, the Giants did kick the first goal of the final quarter to send maybe a little bit of a shiver down the Crows' spine, but every time the Giants would start to threaten to come back into this game, the Crows would quickly respond. And coming off the bye, the Crows were really strong in the end, were able to hold the Giants at bay and win by 16 points. That's a good win from the Crows. They really needed it. And right now, the Giants sitting in a little bit of no man's land right now, falling outside of the 8 after having a massive start to this year. So they've really fallen off. They're really going to have to find that form. So moving to the statistics now of this game, Lachie Whitfield top scored with the 160. He was massive. Mitch Hinge with the 116. Isaac Rankin with the 115. Cullen Ward with the 109. Jordan Dawson with the 106. And then Tom Green with the 106 as well. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Isaac Rankin, 2 votes went to Mitch Hinge, and the 1 vote went to Ben Keys. Now I know Lachie Whitfield, be surprised that he didn't get into the votes here, having 41 disposals, but he only had 3 score involvements. So I feel like that Lachie Whitfield, yes, had a lot of touches, but I just feel like he's not having a lot of influence on those touches, and I feel like he needs to start having a lot more impact on the scoreboard. Not kicking goals necessarily, but he needs to start using these disposals to get scoreboard impact for his team. And unfortunately, I didn't think he did that last night. But moving into the last game of Saturday, of course, it was the Cats up against Essendon. And Geelong going into this game had a great record against the Bombers, and they continued that form in the end, winning by 45 points, 105 to Geelong, 60 to Essendon. There was an injury concern from this game, which was Mitch Duncan. He was subbed out in the last quarter with almost a full body cramp, so hopefully he's all good for next week because he's really important to their back half. But in some horrid conditions throughout most of the night, the game started pretty high scoring with 7 goals kicked in the first quarter. The Bombers did bring some real heat around the contest early with their pressure, and a quarter time actually led by a goal. The game felt a little bit more controlled in the second term, but it did feel like the Cats were just starting to make their way into this game and drew level late in the first half, but again the Bombers would kick a late goal to take the lead by 5 points moving into half time. Both teams traded goals start of the second half, but the Cats finally got on a bit of a run. They kicked 4 goals in a row midway through the third term to take the biggest lead of the game at 3/4 time by 27 points. And Geelong were finally hitting some grooves. They haven't really been able to do it really since early in the season when they got on that massive 7 wins in a row. And Geelong continued their run in the final term. They kicked another 2 more goals to start the final quarter to make it 6 in a row and really put this game to bed. The Bombers at the moment have some real concerns now, and they went down in the game by 45 points over the Cats. So Essendon right now, they're in a real interesting spot. They sit outside the top 4. Everyone was expecting that they were just going to bounce back, but out of their last 4 games, they've only won 1. They're in a bit of trouble here. If they don't make the top 4, we've seen what's happened when they've finished from like 8th to 5th, because they lose a lot of finals. They have not won a final in 20 years. So unfortunately for the Bombers, they're going to have to find a different way here. And against the Cats, they were expected to win this one and they lost. So not the best performance from the Bombers. Really good job from Geelong, of course, and they get themselves back in the 8. On to the statistics of this game, though. Jai Caldwell, massive game from him. He top scored with the 144. Jack Bowes with the 123. Ollie Dempsey with the 107. Tom Stewart with the 105. Max Holmes with the 101. And then Paddy Dangerfield with the 92. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Jack Bowes, 2 votes went to Ollie Dempsey, and the 1 vote went to Max Holmes. So now, guys, we get to the first game on Sunday, and it was St Kilda up against Port Adelaide. And despite a goalless last term, Port Adelaide were able to hold on by 2 points in the end. St Kilda 60, Port Adelaide 62. There was one injury concern from this game. It's a pretty big one on Port Adelaide's front, which was Todd Marshall. Unfortunately, in the third term, he was subbed out with a hamstring strain. Hopefully it's not too bad for him, but he's a big loss for Port Adelaide.
But let's get to the game itself. After St Kilda kicked the first goal off this game, Port Adelaide quickly responded, actually kicked the next 4 goals of the game. But St Kilda fought their way back late in the first quarter and only down by 4 points at quarter time. Port Adelaide did start to dominate the stoppages and the territory battle in the second term, but failed to really capitalise on the scoreboard. Port Adelaide kicked 2 goals 5 in the second term, but should have been a lot further in front. St Kilda actually took the few chances that they did have, and scores are all square at half time. Now, both teams really struggled to kick a goal in the third term, with the first goal not coming until 19 minutes into the quarter, which was the first goal for young gun in Logan Evans. It was only one of the 2 goals that were kicked in the third term by Port Adelaide, and St Kilda were goalless. Port Adelaide had some chances again. They still had 2 goals 5 on the scoreboard and only held a 13-point lead going into 3/4 time. But things started to change really quickly as St Kilda kicked the first 2 goals of the final term and drew the scores level midway through the quarter. And then it got really tight. Both teams could not convert, and in the end, with only 1 point scored for the majority of the last 10 minutes, Port Adelaide kicked a late behind and in the end only won by 2 points. So it was a win that Port Adelaide had to have in the end, but really I don't think it's going to mean a lot for Ken Hinkley. We did see after the game how emotional he was. He had a few tears in his eyes in the interview with, I think it was Sarah Jones. So I don't think anyone's ever doubted that Ken Hinkley loves the club, but I just think at this stage it's coming towards the end. But it was a good win from Port Adelaide that showed some true heart. But again, they've still got a lot more issues. And St Kilda, well, they've fallen off the face of the earth. Last year, they made, 6th on the ladder, went out straight away, and this year, languishing down in 15th spot. But let's get to the statistics in this game, of course. AFL Fantasy front, top scorer was Jack Sinclair with the 135, Rowan Marshall with the 119, Jason Horne-Francis with the 112, Kane Farrell with the 105, Mason Wood with the 102, and then Alia with the 99. Now, of course, we get to the votes. Now, my brother actually gave the votes for these games because he watched a lot more of it, a lot more intently. And he's gone with 3 votes. In the end, goes to Sinclair. 2 votes went to Jason Horne-Francis, and the 1 vote went to Rowan Marshall. So now into the middle game on Sunday, and it was 2 big Melbourne clubs. It was Richmond up against Carlton. After Carlton blitzed them in the third quarter and mostly in the second half, they ran out pretty comfortable winners in the end. Carlton by 61 points, 131 to 70 in the end. There were a couple of injury concerns from this game. The first one was, unfortunately, Dustin Martin. He was subbed out in the third term with a back injury, so that's really concerning. And Matthew Kennedy came off in the last quarter with a hammy concern and took no further part in the game. So that's really concerning for both of those players. Hopefully they're back for both of those sides. The start of this game actually showed some real promise. It was a couple of goals either way to start this game. It's a pretty tired sort of first quarter. Not really goals kicked. There was only 4 goals kicked between both the sides. And at quarter time, after a late goal from Carlton, they saw the lead by 3 points. Going into the second term, Carlton kicked 4 straight goals to take a pretty comfortable lead over 30 points. But to Richmond's credit, they were able to kick 3 goals to get back to within 10 points in this game. But at half time, Carlton did have a 2-goal lead. They did miss some opportunities in the second term, Carlton. They kicked 5 goals 4, but in the end, they still had a pretty comfortable margin. Now going into the second half, Richmond actually kicked the first goal of it, but then Carlton got on their massive run. They kicked 7 goals in a row to take a really good lead going into 3/4 time with a 45-point margin and didn't stop into the last quarter. Richmond did kick a couple of goals in the final term to keep the score somewhat respectable, but in the end, a 6-goal last quarter from Carlton was good enough to end up with 20 goals in the end and run out by 61 points. So, of course, with Sydney losing their game, they have gained 1 more win on the ladder. They still sit in second spot, the Blues, but they are the real contender right now in the premiership race. So, really good win from Carlton. They had a massive win in the midfield battle. Of course, they had a much more experienced midfield, but in the end, they did what they had to do. They had to smash a team that was down the bottom, and Carlton did that. So, really good job from the Blues. But moving into the statistics of this game, Nick Newman top scored with the 143. He was massive. Sam Walsh with the 132. Patrick Cripps with the 129. Nan Curvis with the 107. Matthew Kennedy with the 100. And then Blake Acres with the 99. So let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Patrick Cripps, 2 votes went to Sam Walsh, and the 1 vote went to Nick Newman. Now let's get to the final game of round 16, which was the West Coast Eagles up against Hawthorn. And Hawthorn really should have won this game by a lot more, but in the end, were able to win by 61 points. 94 to the Hawks, 33 to the West Coast Eagles. There were a couple of injury concerns, one to either side. The first one was Matt Flynn. He came off in the third term with an ankle injury and then was subbed out. That would be really concerning for the Eagles as they have really wanted him to play throughout the whole year. He was already out for the start of the season with an injury, and now they finally got him back. There's a ruck that they wanted, and then he's out again, probably for quite a while, so it's really concerning for the Eagles. And James Sicily did not play any further part in the game after 3/4 time with a rib concern, but I really think that was more precautionary, so hopefully he's all good for next week for the Hawks. But moving to the game itself, Hawthorn started one of the hottest teams in the comp in the first 10 minutes of this game. Me and my brother was streaming it, and Hawthorn were out of the blocks like a house on fire. But At the end of the day, Hawthorn didn't convert on the scoreboard. Only kicked 1 goal in the first 15 minutes of this game. They did kick 2 goals throughout the later parts of the first quarter and took a 17-point lead in the quarter time, but honestly, they should have been way further in front of the Hawks. West Coast did kick an early goal in the second quarter, but in the end, it was a pretty tired sort of second term. There weren't a lot of goals in it. We saw 4 goals traded either way, but it wasn't really one for the highlight reel, I'm going to be honest. Working into the second half, Hawthorn really started to break away when they kicked 4 goals in a row, take a pretty comfortable lead by 39 points. I know I'm really kind of rushing through this game, but really it was a pretty terrible game of footy, I'm going to be honest. West Coast quickly responded just before 3-quarter time, but again, Hawthorn ran away with another 5 goals and they had a 68-point lead, but West Coast pegged back a couple of points in the end to only lose by 61 points. But as you would have heard if you watched the stream, Hawthorn had this game well won 20 minutes into the first quarter. West Coast didn't really fire a shot. It was a really poor performance from the West Coast Eagles. There are a lot of efforts that if I was Adam Simpson, I'd be reputable at by a couple of their younger players, the senior players. But at the end of the day, Hawthorn were very good and a team that is really fighting hard to try and break into the finals race. So really good win from Hawthorn. Terrible performance from the West Coast Eagles. Looking at the AFL fantasy front though, on the statistics front, Liam Duggan top score with the 132, Dylan Moore with the 127, James Sicily with the 113, that was in 3 quarters by the way, Lloyd Meek with the 112, Connor McDonald with the 103, and then Jai Newcomb with the 99. Now let's get to the votes in this game. Me and my brother both conferred on this and we decided these were the 3 votes. In the end, so 3 votes went to Lloyd Meek, 2 votes went to Dylan Moore, and the 1 vote went to James Warple. But guys, of course, with all that being said, we are at the end of round 16, and let's take a look at the ladder. So the Swans, even though they lost, they still are 2 games clear on top of the ladder with the 52 points. Carlton are in second spot with a 6-point lead on the next position on them with 44. Fremantle will jump into the top 4 in third spot with a massive win over the Swans on 38. They lead equal points on Essendon, who hold on into 4th spot. The Cats with their win are in 5th spot, equal points with the Pies and Port Adelaide, who are in 7th. Brisbane with their win early in the round jump into the top 8. The Bulldogs are in 9th. GWS drop down into 10th spot on 32 along with the Gold Coast in 11th, Melbourne in 12th, and then Hawthorn in 13th. The Crows with their win jump into 14th spot but are still 10 points away from Hawthorn. St Kilda with their loss against Port Adelaide drop down into the bottom 4 and 15th. West Coast Eagles are in 16th. Richmond are in 17th and North Melbourne are still down the bottom of the ladder. But guys, of course, that is the end of the review for round 16. If you did enjoy this episode of the review, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe, of course. And if you are listening to this on Spotify, of course, make sure to leave us 5 stars. And make sure to follow so you're notified on the podcast, the review, and the trade videos that we drop on Spotify as well. Now, I'm going to try and get my ring light back. It was broken, and I had to fix up all my computer stuff this week. So I'm sorry if it looks a little bit shitty, but hopefully you understand. And there won't be a video essay this week. We try to drop them every 2 weeks. So, of course, we dropped the journalism one last week. We're going to try and drop a Hawthorn video in next week. So hopefully for any of the Hawthorn fans, they'll enjoy that. But again, thank you for listening, guys. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all next week.